guys, this is Pete Correale with the Waterman's Guide. Today we're going to show you how to set up your spear gun with new bands. So the first thing we're going to show you guys how to do is tie some new bands on your gun. The easiest way to set yourself up with some new bands on your gun is to take the old bands off, take your new band material, and basically just measure up the new bands with the old bands and then cut them the same length. It'll save you from having to use the whole formula to figure out the right length for your bands. So the gun we're setting up today is a 130 centimeter rear handle Ulu sub. This gun we rig with just 2 bands. So basically gonna go over everything we need to set that up. We have our 2 pre-cut bands. We also put the ends on a grinder wheel and tapered the ends. We have our wishbones. There's a couple different types of wishbones you can use. In this case, we're using some pre-made wishbones, basically just Dyneema with these little beads on the end of them. The Dyneema is super strong and resilient to chafing on the fin tabs on the shaft. We also have our wishbone insertion tool. This specific tool has a flared end, which is made to fit the specific beads that are on the ends of our wishbones. We've got our band tying line. We've pre-cut 4 lines for this. We've also gone ahead and tied loops on either end of each band tying line. This is going to allow us to get good leverage on this line when we tighten our constrictor knots on the bands. We also have a little small bottle of lube. I mean, this is basically like a soapy mixture in a spray bottle. We squirt this on the ends of the bands and it makes it easier to push our wishbones in through the bands. We also have a lighter, which we're gonna use to burn the ends of our band tying material after we tie our constrictor knots and cut the slack off. We also have a knife. We'll be using that to cut our line with. And I also have a needle nose plier, which we'll use to help us actually pull our constrictor knots tight. We'll put the end of these pliers through the loop in our band tying line. So the first thing we're gonna do with setting up these bands is we're going to insert one end of our wishbone into one end of the band. So we're gonna put a little bit of lube on the end of this band, make sure it gets into the hole, so make things easier for getting this wishbone in. We're gonna place the beaded end of the wishbone in our insertion tool. And we're going to insert our wishbone end into the band. Make sure you push the bead far enough into the band as to leave enough room for when we put our band tying line on there. We can always pull, after we tie our constrictor knot, we can pull the wishbone back. We're now going to take one of our band tying lines that we've set up and tie our constrictor knot around the band to hold our wishbone in place. I'm gonna show you guys the quick and easy shortcut way to tying your constrictor knot. Take your band tying line, form a loop like so. Take the far end of your loop, push it towards the center of the line, spin the 2 loops and bring them around like so. There is your loop with your constrictor knot. Now you take this loop, run your wishbone through it and run it over the top of your band like so. Bring it tight to the band. Make sure to keep both parts of the line tight together. Bring it snug. And now this is when the loops that we put on the ends of the line come into play. I'm gonna use the band insertion tool and these needle nose pliers, and I'm gonna put each one on the end of the loop. This is gonna give us some leverage. You basically wanna pull this knot as tight as you can get it. This is gonna keep your wishbone from pulling out of the band when under load. So we've tied our band tying line with a constrictor knot to the end of the band to hold our wishbone in tight. Take my knife, Going to trim the leftover line from each end. I'm gonna take my lighter, carefully burn the ends of the band tying line. Pull my wishbone up. That side of the band is done. We're now gonna go on to the other band and do the same thing. So the gun that we are setting up today has a closed muzzle. So we're gonna have to run these bands through the muzzle before we tie the other ends of the wishbones on. I'm just going to insert my wishbone through the muzzle, pull it through. Make sure we're somewhat centered. I can even spray a little bit of that lube in there to make it easier. I'm gonna pull my second band through, same way I pulled the first one. Alrighty. We've pulled both our bands through the muzzle. We're now going to repeat the same process we did on this end of the band with the other ends of the bands. We're gonna insert our wishbone and tie on our band tying line. One thing to take note of is using that system that we showed you how to use to tie the constrictor knot. You have to make sure you set up the constrictor knot first, place it over the band, bring it in snug so it holds on. Not too tight though, because you still have to push your wishbone through. And then you'll push the wishbone through, reposition your band tying line and pull tight. So we now have our new bands rigged and set up on our gun. These bands are gonna give us more power and better range than what we were getting out of our older, worn out bands.